So now we're ready to talk about Q&A and next steps. So I know we have some questions in the chat. I'm going to try and figure out how to unmute everybody because I'd love to hear voices and hear what you want to ask. But I wanted to mention that you can use your smartphone to capture this QR code, and it will take you to a website where you could ask to be informed and receive information about and updates about the cooperative conversion of Tiny Diner. So I'll give you a minute to do that. And I'm going to see if I can get some of our information from our chat. So there was a question about the feasibility study. And so the feasibility study, it encompasses a lot of things. It encompasses evaluation of the business, evaluation of the real estate or the property. It also includes financial analysis to really see and open the books so that members have visibility. That's part of the democratic leadership and ownership process. And so and Kim would have a lawyer and the cooperative would have a lawyer. So it's really designed to be able to have both interests represented and sitting at the table. Okay, the other question is, how is fair assessment made and is there a premium added? So again, as part of the feasibility study, we would take a look at and have evaluation of the business and the property. And then it would be a negotiation, just like buying anything else, between Kim and the group that's looking to buy the cooperative. And I am going to we've got a question from, let's see, C. Nichols. If you want to unmute, you can ask your question.
Hi, I think it's me, so I'll just go with that. I was wondering what the neighborhood conversation is going to be around inviting folks that live in the neighborhood to meet with employees from Tiny Diner and kind of have this conversation on a community level.
So that's a great question and a great comment. So that kind of leads to next steps. So the next steps, we're doing a couple of additional information sessions. And so similar to this, where folks will have an opportunity to ask questions and discuss ideas around the cooperative, learn more about it. And then from there, what we'll do is start to have more of those deeper dive conversations, like I described as part of the formation process, looking at creating a steering committee, that sort of thing. So I think after the initial info sessions, it would be great to have sort of a community coming together, workers and folks in the community, to have a more in-depth conversation about the cooperative. Okay, I'm going to check the Q&A again.
Something?
Yes, go ahead, Kim. Yeah.
So we are starting to talk to employees and of course make them aware that we're in this process and invite them to be part of the process. You know, some are interested and some just aren't going to be interested, and you know, we have to make it possible for everyone to participate, but we can't require people to participate.
Thanks for sharing that, Kim. And then we have a question from Julia. In terms of the steps for creating a cooperative, her question is this dictated by statute or more by best practices? So it's really best practices, those steps. If you do any research, and I've done quite a bit on cooperatives, or take any classes, it'll talk. So the CTAP class will walk you through that process, and you'll be able to understand why each of those pieces are so important. They are critical to the success of the cooperative. And so it's not by statute, but it is definitely best practice. And from lots of different successes and failures of establishing cooperatives. And then where is Tiny Diner in the process right now? Well, if we think back to those steps that I mentioned, we're really in that identifying the people who are interested phase, although we've done some of the heavy lifting for the feasibility study and the cost analysis piece. So really still in the early stages, getting people interested and identifying those who might be interested in Tiny Diner becoming a cooperative. And so the next step, as I mentioned, and I'm going to bring up that presentation again so that you all can see and use that QR code. So the best thing to do to go forward is to sign up for getting this information using that QR code. So let's see here. Any other questions?
Ishelle, I don't know if you've got this question. It's for current employees who aren't interested in being a worker owner. Is there a way for them to retain their current employment status if Tiny Diner does transition to be a cooperative model? Can a restaurant co-op employ traditional workers who don't own a stake in the business?
Thanks for catching that question for me, Elaine. And here's the great news, that you can be a worker owner or you can just be an employee. So I'm going back to that example of Casa Nueva, and they have worker owners. About 40% of their workers are worker owners and 60% are associates. So you have that option. It really does depend upon what fits for you and your lifestyle. I'll give you an example. The young woman I talked to, Alicia from Casa Nueva, she initially started working at the restaurant as a college student. So she was an associate. And then she got her degree, went off, did a job, and then decided, you know what, I would really like to be a worker owner. So she went back to Casa Nueva this time, went through the apprenticeship program in order to become a worker owner, and is now a worker owner for about, I think, 15 years. And her husband is a worker owner. One of the interesting things that she shared with me is that when they got ready to close on their new home for the first time, they were short on funds, which happens sometimes when you get to a closing. You don't have exactly the amount of money that you need. And they were able to take a loan out against their stake in the business in order to fund the last bit of their closing costs that they needed. So from that story, what you can glean is that there are really some opportunities to have a really solid quality of life with being a worker owner. Justin, you had a question? Go right ahead.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, actually, this is kind of a question for the lawyer. I'm actually interested in other types of businesses that could possibly be co-ops, possibly starting a business that's incorporated and then selling it off as a co-op in retirement. I'm wondering if there's limitations to revenue, because the business models that you're proposing are relatively small.
So there isn't. So if you think about Land O'Lakes and Health Partners, they have healthy revenue, right? I mean, we know that they're some of the biggest companies in the country, a Forbes 500 list. So there aren't any restrictions in terms of revenue. And I'm happy to, if you wanted to ask some questions about, we've got a couple of co-op experts, including Elaine on the line. And so happy to entertain a follow-up question if you have one specifically around cooperatives.
Actually, I don't actually understand the difference between profit sharing, co-op, and gosh, there's another one, employee-owned businesses. Like, the terminology is just a bit confusing. I don't know about the legal structure in Texas that sort of thing.
Sure. So I'll take a stab at it, and then Elaine, you can chime in, and maybe even Benjamin Say from Nexus will have something to add. So I'll start with the ESOP, so employee, and now it's leaving me. It's the they share in the profits. It's a profit sharing plan. And that is structured so that when the business is successful, they get, for lack of a better term, a bonus or a share of the profits when they establish that business. So that's one form of employees having a vested interest and actually a financial interest in the business. Elaine, do you want to talk about cooperatives a little bit? You're muted.
Sorry, I will let Ben take that, but I will just say with the ESOPs, which is commonly how you'll hear about them, the employee share profit sharing, they are not necessarily owners, but they are sharing in the profits of the organization. And Ben, I'll let you, and then I'll follow up with any points after Ben.
Yeah, can you restate the question?
Yeah, so basically my biggest question is, can a co-op, if you are an employee of a co-op and it's an employee-owned co-op, can you accrue debt if the business fails? And then the other part is like how that contrasts or compares to that of profit sharing versus, I forgot the third one, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Just wondering
Sure.
about that and how the equity works and basically like the details.
Typically, under normal circumstances, a worker owner at a co-op does not accrue personal debt, but you do have to be careful about personal guarantees. If you sign a personal guarantee, you are potentially kind of putting yourself into a position where you could. That said, co-ops are a form of corporation, so typically it's
It wouldn't be personal, it'd be the business.
The business is the main carrier of the debt, not the worker owners.
Yeah, and how does that compare to like an LLC? Because you were talking about typically, and if that actually could lead to that, or like personal. I'm just wondering how it separates, like compared to like an LLC, which you could just close down the business if you get sued.
Yeah, it's similar. Co-ops are a form of corporation, so it's similar to a situation of shareholders of a corporation, as long as you don't sign personal guarantees.
Good to know.
So I do want,
yeah,
sorry,
go ahead,
Isha, there was the way Justin asked this question the second time is very different than I asked the question the first time, which I think was, no, that's not a criticism, but I think your first question was important. So I want to make sure in case other people have, having the same question. So Justin's original question, there was like, what is a co-op? There's all these labels, which one is a co-op, right? And there's ESOPs, there is cooperatives, like all the things that Michelle talked about, and there's other derivatives of that, right? So the biggest difference between all of those is typically ownership, who owns it. So like I just explained, in an ESOP, the employees are not necessarily the owners, but they are taking a portion of the profit, right? So like Costco, right? All the members take a piece of the profit. You get a check at the beginning of the following year saying you're getting a piece of the profit based on all of our memberships. So the difference is ownership, and where the ownership lies and the decision-making lies, also where the liability lies. So just to have a little bit of clarity around Justin's second question, because I don't think it was necessarily clear. If you're a worker owner, and let's say your partner is buying, let's just say for argument's sake, a boat, right? And if you're taking out a loan for that boat, and if you put yourself as a guarantor on the loan for the boat, you've now just put your equity stake in the cooperative, like that's what the guarantee means, that any assets that you have, which includes your owner equity stake in the cooperative, will now be counted as something that could satisfy the debt on the boat if for some reason the payments on the boat are defaulted. So I just wanted to make that connection because I think like it was kind of convoluted all together. And the guarantee comes in as if you guarantee another piece of debt outside of the cooperative, that if you make yourself a guarantor, you are now putting your owner equity stake as a liability against this other piece of debt that you are signing on for. So I wanted to just make that, I think that was a really important distinction. I want to make sure people are clear on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. So we've reached the top of the hour and I want to be respectful of folks' time. If you would, in the next few moments, out, point your camera towards the Q and a website where you can register for information related to the cooperative. Oop, my computer's doing all sorts of things. I wonder if I have a nice bug. So let's see, it looks like we've got one other question here and I'm going to stop sharing simply because Siri just automatically appeared. Let's see here. Oh, Kyle Johnson mentioned, and then we'll close. Kyle Johnson mentioned he's part of a team working on purchasing a co-op for Black-owned construction business. And his question is, do any of the experts have any recommendations or resources for creating purchasing co-ops? And so Kyle, if you would sign up to the information session or for the QR code and the information, we'll be happy to follow up with you on that. There's an opportunity for you to include information there about any questions or how you want to participate. So let me see if I can't get that QR code up one more time. I absolutely am wondering about my computer at this point. And so thank you all for joining. And I hope that you'll consider being a part of this cooperative effort. I've been excited about participating in it. And I think it's a great opportunity for the community to own a wonderful restaurant that is an asset to the community. I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining.